Hello everyone and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Bermuda Initial Research Show. Hope you all had a much better weekend than I did. Sportsbook, betting wise, DFS, everything to go with it. Mine was terrible all the way around. And on top of all that, you can probably tell I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. Quite a bit nasally. So you'll have to bear with me. Forgive me as I sniffle and cough, sneeze, and otherwise phlegm my way through this show. I'll try not to do it too much and break your all's eardrums. So just bear with me with that. But again, how was your all's weekend? I hope your all's was successful at the Zozo. It was just it was bad for me all the way around. Did you have Matsuyama? Did you play some Tringali? So on and so forth. Because of clearly that I am feeling a little bit under the weather, this is going to be a shorter show than normal. With that being said, the usual intro here. Chat is open. Let me know what you're thinking, how this weekend was at the Zozo, what you're looking forward to at the Bermuda. My links to social media are in the description. Give me a follow there. You will see my betting cards and other interesting notes throughout the week. And then all statistics are provided by fantasynational.com. Amazing resource. Go check it out. It makes someone like me think that they can do this for a living. And then lastly, I've been teasing it for a little while, one more week. The initial research show for the Mayakoba will have my special announcement. That will be Sunday evening, the 31st. So exciting time. Please tune in for that, as I am quite excited to announce something and share something with you all. So with that, let's look into some initial research for the 2022 Bermuda. And we're going to start, as we always do, with the tournament fact sheet. And it is not out yet. This year's is not out yet. But fortunately, this tournament has been running for a couple years now. It's the same course. So we do have quite a bit of information on it. We are at Port Royal Golf Course in Southampton, Bermuda. It is a Robert Trent Jones design. So while there is no RTJ filter in Fantasy National, there's quite a few Robert Trent Jones designs that we can kind of draw comparisons with throughout the week. Let's make sure chat is up here. The couple of the biggest things to note right off the bat, this is a par 71 at just over 6,800 yards. It's a very, very, very short course. So we'll definitely be looking at some of those metrics this week. It's average green size with not a lot of fairway, not a lot of rough. 5 holes with water in play. This course sits right on the Atlantic Ocean. So wayward tee shots or approaches can definitely find some trouble. We are on Bermuda greens, and these are some of the slowest greens on tour. In fact, in 2019, calendar year 2019, tour season 2020, these greens were labeled as Velcro. Very slow greens. So be mindful of that as you're going through your research this week. The only other thing that I've kind of taken some note of is the rough is Zoysia. And the reason why I take some note of that is that Zoysia is quite a bit different than most other roughs, especially if you listen to commentary throughout the week, TV broadcast wise. The Zoysia rough can catch a club. It's a little unpredictable. It makes chipping a lot more difficult or different. So whenever I see Zoysia rough, I plan to take a note of that and probably the around the green play will be magnified this week with that Zoysia rough. So the better around the green players just get better with Zoysia rough. As the way I understand it, but we'll definitely look into the data for that. So there's the tournament fact sheet. At least from last year, and again, not much is going to change. Still a par 71, still a very, very short course. A little bit of water in play, Bermuda grass, and so on. So with that, let's head over to Fantasy National, and this is the kind of the default that I look for at Fantasy National. It's the last 36 for the last 6 months, no filters. I just like to get an idea of who Fantasy National kind of gravitates towards the top, and at least in a strokes gained total means. And there are 2 or 3 guys that I want to highlight. There's really one, I would say, premier player, at least stateside. There's another one that's pretty well known internationally, and is known well here in the States. And then somebody who might not be. So the biggest name this week is Patrick Reed. And stop highlighting it all. Get off there. Patrick Reed. I've been on record to say that the Ryder Cup snub, I think, is probably going to light a fire under Patrick Reed this season. At least that's the narrative that I believe. And it hasn't come true yet. And if we take a look and just look at Patrick Reed, he has not been good in the past, really, couple months. The CJ Cup was a mitigated disaster. Missed the cut at the Shriners. The Tour Championship was 25th out of 30. Lost a lot of strokes here. He's normally been known as a around the green type player. Even that, while it's still positive, is nowhere near his career norms. His irons have been very bad. He's never been good off the tee. Even that is, that's atrocious. So he just hasn't been good lately. Now I'm still going to back, my belief that he's going to have a pretty good season, but the form needs change if that's going to happen. But he is quite clearly the biggest name in the field this week. The other bigger name is Matthew Fitzpatrick. And while he is known more internationally, he's starting to make some waves in the States. And he, too, has been kind of lackluster lately. The Northern Trust, which was the first FedEx Cup playoff event, was pretty bad for him. The WGC St. Jude, also very, very bad. The Open Championship, he played well, but not even a top 25. He still played well. An okay U.S. Open. The Palmetto, while it's a top 10, it was not quite a alternate field level of competition. It was close. So, it's not inspiring, the past five or so events. Now, he has gotten much better off the tee than his career norms, but his irons have not been good. He's always been known as a good short game player. That's deteriorating. Putting has not been very good. So it's another form of Patrick Reed here, although the off the tee is still fine. So those are the 2 main kind of highlighters or headliners for this event. Now the third person I want to talk about, and somebody who's not very well known in the States but is starting to garner some attention internationally, is Christian Bezuidenhout. And Seabez has been he's gaining some notoriety. The Open was not fantastic. The U.S. Open was kind of, iffy. But you see here, his when he comes stateside, these are big tournaments, and he's generally playing okay. You know, 37th at the Memorial, 30th at the PGA. It seems like he probably just stayed stateside after the Masters to play Heritage, Players, Arnold Palmer, WGC, Masters in the fall. And while he has always been very short off the tee and can get wayward off the tee, so that's not a very good combination at all, his irons are pretty solid. He's always been a good or decent short game player, and he's putting the lights out lately. So those are, kind of the three guys that I've wanted to highlight, the two headliners, and then Christian Bezuidenhout is a kind of an early lean depending on price or odds in sportsbook, where he falls in the price board for DFS. I just want to bring some attention to Christian Bezuidenhout, as he is starting to play some really good golf, and looks like he's probably going to be coming stateside more often. But again, just kind of getting a feel for who has played the best in the past 6 months. You have Seamus Power, Mito Pereira, Hank Lebioda, Migliozzi, Patrick Rogers, Hubbard, Buckley, Shank, Stewart Hall. So you have a mix here of some Korn Ferry Tour graduates, some somewhat established guys on the PGA Tour, especially Seamus Power, who's got his win now. Hank Lebioda had a very, very good late summer, early fall run. Patrick Rogers has been a mainstay on the PGA Tour. So while this is not an alternate field level of competition, it's not the strongest either. I would definitely gravitate towards the weaker end of a level of field here at Port Royal Golf Club this week. Let's take a quick look at the course breakdown, and some of the statistics that we normally have we won't, because I don't believe Port Royal has ShotLink. But the biggest key here that I want you to take away from Port Royal is the hardest 3 holes are all par 3s. The most difficult is the signature hole here at Port Royal. It's a 235-yard par 3, so it's a long par 3. You tee up over or on a cliff, and the only thing between the tee box and the green is the Atlantic Ocean. So very, very difficult par 3. You can see here plays to more than a quarter stroke over par. It's just an extremely tough par 3. That's the toughest hole on the course. The second toughest is a fairly long par 3 as well on the front 9. And the third toughest hole is another par 3 of the same length earlier on the back 9. So the 3 toughest holes on the course are the par 3s, or 3 of the 4 par 3s. And that's where the length of this golf course comes in, because you can see, you've got an extremely short par 5 here at 17, a mid-length par 5 on number 2, but it yields a decent amount of eagles. A very short par 5 here, which yields quite a few eagles. So the par 3s is where this course has its length, has its teeth. And you'll see here by this graph below, these strokes gained by hole by par. In a normal tour event, the strokes gained par 5 far outweighs 3 and 4. Guys just take advantage of the par 5s, and whoever takes more advantage throughout the week generally wins. Not the case here at Port Royal. Because the par 3s are so difficult, if you can get your way with pars around there throughout the week, you're going to win. That's why it's the most important, hole by par that there is here at Port Royal. You got to take care of the par 3s here. You just got to get your pars and move on to the next hole, because this course really isn't, while it's not easy, it's not terribly difficult beyond the par 3s. You certainly have a couple of par 4s that can come up and bite you, but they're not long. They just have A little bit of trouble on them, whether it's water or whatnot. So, the 4th, 5th, and 6th are all par 4s, are all pretty darn short par 4s. But, again, the emphasis this week is on the par 3s. I don't generally gain too much insight from here in these 4 graphs, although you would typically expect these graphs to kind of go on an upward consistent trend. The interesting thing is here, the 3-putt avoidance and the fairways gained actually take a dip. So that generally tells me that fairways might not be as important this week. But I don't want to say that with a lot of confidence. So we'll definitely take a look at that in the Data Dive show later on tonight. But, like I said, I generally don't glean a whole lot from these 4 graphs here. Hole composition. We mentioned the par 3s. You've got one extremely short par 3 that guys generally take advantage of. You've got and these are the 3 hardest holes on the course. You've got a fairly long par 3 here and 2 extremely long par 3s here. Now, whether or not this leads to, we want to focus in on the length of these par 3s, we'll see. But we just know that the overall par 3s are what's important. But you do have a lot of short par 4s here. A lot of short par 4s. In fact, only one par 4 measures over 450 yards on the scorecard. So, again, as we talked about just now with the par 3s, we'll see if the length of these par 4s matter. And slight spoiler, they will. But we'll get into that. While this course is technically easy, I'm not going to use any easy metrics this week. And you'll see why in the leaderboard. Now, last year might have been an outlier, but we only have 2 years of data here at Port Royal, so I can only go with 2 years of data. I just don't feel confident or comfortable using any, the course's easy type metrics. While you have more birdies and bogeys, you can actually see a part of this graph that's in doubles, double bogeys. The eagles is very, very low. So, while you have more birdies than bogeys, you have more doubles than eagles. So, yeah, it's probably going to play a little bit on the easy side, but nothing to the extent of what we've had so far on the PGA Tour in the wraparound season, the Sanderson Farms, the Shriners, the CJ Cup, so on and so forth. And you see that with the historic cut line, -1 in calendar year 2019, but PGA Tour season 2020 was -1. That's it's not exactly easy. It's technically defined as average, but it's on the easier end of average. But last year was +2. Again, technically defined as average, but it's on the difficult end of average. So you've got average cut line, just 2 extremes of it. Driving accuracy tends to be very low here. Green and regulation percentage seems to be low here. Higher scrambling, higher 3 putts per round. So you'll notice that there's no driving distance graph, and there's no proximity graph here. And we'll see that here in a bit. There are some statistics that we just don't have, but there are a lot of sub-statistics that we'll absolutely take a look at and will help us glean some insight at Port Royal. But there's a quick look at the course breakdown. Scroll back here in the top. I'll probably refer to it here a couple of times. But if we look at the tournament history, and again, this is sorted by strokes gained total. No surprise here that Brian Gay is your strokes gained leader. He's your defending champion from last year and tied for 3rd in the inaugural Bermuda. You got Ryan Armour and David Hearn, who both have tied for 8th each year. Leviota, McCarthy, Kramer Hickok, Russell Knox. The key takeaway I want you to get from this is that the fact that most of these players in the field have not played this course. And even those that are positive, they're pretty middling performances. Once you come up to maybe Scott Stallings, Bo Hostler maybe, you have kind of this trend of somebody liking a course. Appy Barnrat tied for 11th last year but didn't play the year before. So did he just have a good week? Fabian Gomez, 7th in the inaugural, missed the cut last year. But you can see the lack of just experience on this golf course by, I would say 2/3 of the field. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then again, here at the bottom, these are the guys that just have not played this course well, and it's generally the same players that are at the bottom of most of these courses. Kevin Sadler, Bo Van Pelt, Chopra, McLaughlin, Ricky Barnes, Seifert, so on and so forth. Patrick Rogers has not played this event well. John Sinden has made the cut and been fairly average or very mediocre. So, yep. That gives you an idea, at least in the top 6 or 7 here, maybe 8, of guys who have shown that they, at least like the layout of this course, like the conditions, and so on. Speaking of the conditions of the course, let's take a look at how again, I'm going to use the PGA Tour season, so the 2020 and 2021 conditions were. And I'm going to combine that with showing you the leaderboard. Here first is 2020. Now you see it played average to easy, so definitely on the easier side. Hitting the fairways was quite difficult that week, and it was the week that it was Velcro speed greens. Of course, very short course, Bermuda, and so on. But average to easy with slow greens yielded a winning score of -24. And that is definitely on the easy side. Definitely on the easy side. -20 was second. You had some 18s, 17s on the way down. So, again, quite easy. But what's interesting, when you come here to 2021, last year's event, it was definitely average. You had a difficult round in there. You had an easy round. The greens were more soft, if that makes a difference. Hitting the fairways was average. It was just more windy last year. That's really the only thing I can guess, because hitting the fairways was actually easier to do last year than it was in 2020. But your winning score was only 15. Brian Gay beat Wyndham Clark in a playoff, and -15 would have just snuck into the top 10, in 2020. 15 would have tied for 8th. So, was it the fact that it was just windier last year? I don't know. But because that's only 2 years of data, is this the outlier? Is it going to play more to this? Is it going to play more to this? Is it somewhere in between? This year will tell a lot. Going into next year's Bermuda and so on. But we're not looking at Bermuda, next year's Bermuda. We're here for this year. So what that tells me is I don't think I'm going to use any speed metrics for the greens. You had Velcro in 2020, average in 2021. Lately, we've been using fast and even lightning greens. Definitely not the case, so I'm just going to be using Bermuda filters, no green speeds. Definitely going to be using short course filters. I'm going to hesitate on using scoring relative to par, and I'm probably not going to use any at all. If I did, it would be easy, but even then, I don't feel comfortable with it because last year it didn't play easy. Bermuda, short. I'll probably take a look at some short rough metrics as well. So that gives you an idea of where I'm at least heading into the week of research, especially for the data dive tonight. let's look at the leaderboards, and I want to highlight something that is just a general problem here for the Bermuda, and I'll try to keep it on the same pages as I switch from 2020 and 2021. All we can gather here at the Bermuda is strokes gained total and strokes gained tee to green. So that means we don't have any putting, don't have any around the green approach or tee. And now normally you might be able to extract the putting from these two. You're not going to be able to do that for this tournament, because everybody is 400ths positive on strokes gained putting. 0.4 to 4.4, 0.4 to 4.4. Not everyone gains 400th on the greens. It's just not the way it goes. So there's no putting to extract from there. So there's not a lot we can gather from this viewpoint of data. Now, where we can go is when we dig a bit deeper. So let's look at fairways and greens. And starting in 2020, because this course is so short, distance does not matter. In fact, Brendan Todd, not long off the tee by any means. Brian Gay, not long off the tee. He's actually positive in distance. Now, Scotty Scheffler, big hitter, definitely takes advantage of it. Aaron Wise doesn't get enough credit for how much he can move it out there. Leviota, not long. Hearn, Armour, not long. So distance is not a factor here. And it was even less so last year. Fairways, again, not really all that much. Wyndham Clark, the person in the playoff, lost. It looks like he didn't hit a fairway all fucking week. Ollie Schneider jams didn't hit a fairway. Looks like it's not all that important. Now, it was in 2019. So, is last year an outlier? Who knows? But even so, when you sort by strokes gained, fairways gained, you had a 28th, which is kind of middling. You had a top 10, top 20 winner, a third up here, but you also have some mediocre performances. That was pretty bad. You got a full-on miss the cut. You got miss the cuts down here that are fairly high on the fairways gained leaderboard. So I am hesitant to say that fairways gained will be a factor this week. Good drives, again, a little bit more of a correlation, but nothing that really pops out at you. Same here. You have a top 20, but a rather lackluster performance here. Top 20, a 26th, a 40th. So, yeah, it doesn't look like fairways or good drives are the key. So let's look at greens. This starts to look at it, but it's still even, just the loosest of correlation. Again, a top 25, you have some high finishes here, a fairly some decent here, miscut. So a little bit stronger of a correlation maybe, but in last year you had a 4th and 8th, your top 20 4th, top 25 2nd. This was a bit more, minus Patrick Rogers and Henrik Norlander and Mike Miller. So again, greens maybe. Of the things on this page, of the stats on this page, I would lean towards greens in regulation being used, but even then I don't know how much of a factor it's really going to be. Sand saves, not at all. Ernst, Ben Taylor, Fred Funk, these are your leaders in sand saves. You've got a couple of miscuts real high here. 49th. Let's look at 2020. Yeah, nothing. 35th, 48th. Yeah, so nothing on this page really jumps out at you as a strong correlation. maybe greens, but even then it's the loosest of correlations. Birdies and bogeys, I doubt we'll be able to glean much. You know, eagles doesn't seem to be a prime factor. Of course, avoid your double bogeys. You get your birdies and avoid bogeys. Let's see. Last year, not really eagles, more so birdies and bogeys. It was a lot more so avoiding the doubles. But, I mean, you can argue that for any tournament. So, yeah. This is where we're going to really start gathering some meaningful stuff here. I want you to notice how we highlighted the importance of the par threes in the course breakdown. You sort by strokes gained par threes. You had your winner here, highest in the leaderboard. Second highest in the leaderboard. 8th, 15th, mediocre performance, a fairly lackluster performance. Third, 11th. This is where it starts to gather some correlation here. And that's also, as a data expert, it's comforting to see that the graph that we saw on the course breakdown matches the underlying data to that for the strokes gained par 3 in 2020. We look at 2021 now. Brian Gay was actually negative to the field in strokes gained par 3, but 16th, 4th, 8th, 2nd, fairly mediocre, fairly lackluster. 4th, 8th, 11th, 4th. Yeah. So the par 3s are absolutely one of the key metrics to the high finishes on the leaderboard. Let's look at the particular lengths of the par 3s. The real short par 3 on the course, not really. I mean, Brendan Todd played it well, but 58th, 41st, 53rd, 3 missed cuts in here. So that's not a direct correlation at all. 45th, missed cut, lackluster. Yeah, that's not a correlation at all. Let's look at I believe this is the second most difficult, the one that's between 200 and 225. And there's only one par 3 of this length. Absolutely none at the top of it. No correlation there. Yeah, I don't see anything for there. I mean, you got like 4 top 10s, but your first and your second aren't even in the scrolling range. That's for last year. Let's look at 2019's. Now, Brendan Todd, your winner, but again, 58th, 41st, 64th, 51st. I don't see a strong correlation here. A little bit more so in 2020 than 2021, but still nothing that would say, all right, that's where you're gaining a lot of strokes on the field. Let's look at the long par 3s. Again, just, top 4 here were fairly okay. I mean, 3 of the top 4, you had a top 15, a second and 8th, top 25. But you had a 51st, a 31st. Nothing terribly inspiring here in the strokes gained on the long par 3s. I mean, look at this. You have a missed cut and the 5th highest on the strokes gained category. Some 21sts come down here. So it looks like it's just the strokes gained par 3 on an overall, like a whole view type picture here is what we're looking at for the par 3 efficiencies. Now, when you come to the par 4s, and again, I spoiled this a little bit or whatnot. I teased it in the course breakdown. What you see here, these are some, you got to come down to 28th before you get anybody that was negative in the par 4s for 2020. And these aren't just, incremental small positives. I mean, 11, 5, 8, 9, 5. Now, Norn was, fairly innocuous. 4, 3. So there is a very strong correlation there. Look here, first, second, 11th. Yeah. When you got to come down to DJ Trahan at, what was this, 10th or 11th? And even then, that's a top 25. Then, 3 more top 20s. That's a pretty strong correlation there. Let's look at 2021. I mean, your winner. I mean, look at this, 15.5. Holy smokes, that is look in the rear view, give them the finger, and drive off. That's you're lapping the field twice with that, 15.5. But even past that, I mean, you have a couple of middling performances here, not inspiring at 34th and 37th, but 4th, 4th, 16th, 21st, second. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty strong correlation. Not as much as 2020, but it's still strong, still there. Let's look at the lengths. This is the range that has the most. It's 350 to 400. Oh, look at this. First, 8th. Yeah, look at this. Again, you got to come down to Trahan to have a middling performance. Now, Ted Purdy, Doug Gim. Doug Gim missed the cut, but I bet you when we look into the data dive, he either played the par 3s atrociously or something else happened where he just didn't putt well or something that we don't have the data for. He didn't, he negated as well as he did on this range of par 4s. Well, even here, you see negative in the longer of the par 4s here at Port Royal. So, there's a pretty decent correlation, especially up top here. Especially up the top, sorted here. You got a real middling here in meh, 8th, 4th, 16th. Again, this is not as strong as 2020. 2020 has been pretty heavily correlated on these par 4s and the par 3 overall. Not so much 2021. It's still a small correlation. It's not a strong indicator, at least in 2021. Let's look at the one long par 4 on the course. That is 450 to 500. Yeah, not really. Got a 41st, a missed cut. Okay. Here, 49th, 37th, 26th. So yeah, a little bit. I think it's more so the strokes gained par 4 in this real short 350 to 400 par 4s. So that's my initial takeaway from these underlying numbers, is going to look at the par 4s and then this range of par 4s here, this 350 to 400. And I believe the last thing we're going to be able to look at is the par 5s. And this is going to be a little different than normal, because most courses strokes gained par 5 is the most important. You can kind of see here, not really all that strong. There's a little bit here, but your first and second, you're not even on the scrolling page. Now it is showing you who's making the cuts, but again, it's not giving you the highest of higher leaderboards. Fabian Gomez, Scheffler. So it's a little bit. I guess it's a little bit. Certainly not what we're. We want to see all the top 10s, the top 11s here. Brian Gay, your winner, your defending champion, was actually negative in the par 5s. Look here, Højgaard. Michael Kim missed the cut as one of the leaders in strokes gained par 5. Luke Donald, Mitchell. So not a lot of strong indicator on the strokes gained par 5. Perhaps it's the particular lengths, but I doubt it. Again, kind of the same people here. Gomez, Scheffler, Knox. Meh. Nothing here. Mitchell, missed the cut. Højgaard, Streb. Not what we're looking for there. Not what we're looking for here. You got the 31st and the 53rd, 28th. Don't like that. 55th, 37th, 40th. Bunch of missed cuts at the top of this par 5, longer par 5 links here. So it doesn't look like a whole lot of par 5s are going to matter. Might take a look at the overall strokes gained par 5 just to see, it did define, especially in 2020, who your cut makers were. Not so much in last year. You had a miscut here, miscuts down here. But in 2020, it was showing you who was making your cuts at least. If that's something you're trying to just make sure you get your 6 of 6 lineups through. But nothing a lot there. It's a lot of par 3s and par 4s this week. And I say that was the last thing we can look at because we don't have any strokes gained approach, we don't have any proximity data, and we don't have any putting data. So that is what we're going to be able to do for the initial research show. Again, apologies, it's going to be a lot shorter show than normal. I'm trying to save my voice for the rest of the week, especially for the the more important data dives, or the data dive show tonight and the DFS Tactics show on Wednesday. So thanks for tuning in. Leave a comment below. Reach out on social media how you did this weekend at the Zozo. What are your early leans or somebody you're looking at this week at the Bermuda. So with that, for the bets that you made this past weekend, for the bets that you're thinking about making this week at the Bermuda, and until I see you tonight, may all your bets be profitable.